You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Naruto Enters the Fairly OddParents. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of pyrohelixdrago on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Timmy's Fishbowl. Come on Cosmo, let's have some fun, Wanda said in a pink lingerie revealing a lot of skin and melons. Oh, what's that Timmy, you wanna go see monster trucks? Okay, Cosmo said as he raised his hand to his ear and faked hearing his godchild and then poofed away. Wanda felt tears pool up in her eyes looking at the empty space that her husband was moments ago and then brought her hands to her eyes and began to weep as her husband rarely if ever touched her, let alone kiss her. It made her sad that he didn't show her any love or passion in all the years they had been married. Wanda had tried many things to get Cosmo's attention, a lot of it embarrassing for her, but tried it cause she knew it piqued his interests, and even then nothing happened. All Cosmo ever wanted to do was spend time with their godchild who they both loved, but for him to prefer Timmy over her hurt a lot, and the fact they did things in secret with each other and away from her made it even more painful. The pink-headed fairy went to the bathroom and cleaned herself up, looking at the mirror in slight anger and sadness as she saw herself. I need to go out and have some fun, Wanda thought, as maybe she needed to stop being so motherly and do something for herself for a change. What should I do, she thought, as it had been years since she had any free time on her hands, as it had always been trying to kindle the flame of romance with her husband or stop him from doing something insane or dealing with her godchildren. Wanda thought of adult activities she could do, actually wanting to do something adult as she had been doing child activities for years, so she'd like to act more her mental state. She changed her appearance to be more human-like. She now had a very curvy body and was wearing a yellow short-sleeve CRP top that was tight around her large cup melons, black sweatpants that did nothing to hide her amazing white peach, athletic legs, and supple peach. Now where to? Wanda thought to herself, as thinking of as many adult activities as she could, but settled on one in particular. Bar. Wanda was enjoying a drink the bartender recommended, sweet and drinkable, she thought as she was drinking sweet sake, and it tasted amazing to her, and as she sat there the bartender actually engaged in conversation with her. It was a nice change of pace to be listened to and agreed with, as people always said she nagged, and that her voice was annoying when listened to hear someone actually enjoy talking to her and engaging was amazing, and quite the relief as she now had a peer. She soon felt like an idiot as she didn't ask for his name and failed to introduce herself properly, and after that she learned the name of her new friend was Naruto Namikaze. Next day. So you're a nanny? Naruto asked her curiously as he talked to her, as there weren't many people in the bar. Sorta, Wanda said, as her job was basically that, but she didn't advertise the many extra details about her job and was glad she used magic to make this place less crowded, as she liked being the center of Naruto's attention. She then talked to him, not realizing the time that went by. Few hours later. Wanda poofed back to her godchild's home, and as she saw Timmy and Cosmo laughing away she easily wormed her way into the conversation and tried to apologize for not being there. You were gone, they both said, not noticing the most obvious frown on her face as the two just walked away and played video games and made more dangerous and harmful wishes. Next day. Wanda walked into the bar and dropped her head onto the table looking exhausted. You look tired, Naruto said, serving her a drink immediately. Thanks, Wanda said as she was stressed and immediately downed the drink. Naruto, do you think I'm boring? She asked him as he was completely honest with him. No, but I think you are trying to be too safe. I mean, everything in life is risky choices and actions. You try to take the safest way, but risks are worthwhile, Wanda, Naruto said as he was a bit of a risk taker and it benefited him a lot. Wanda then thought of something she had done in the past that was considered risky but soon thought of nothing. Later that day. Wanda sighed as she tried to be NTMT with her husband again, but he was now faking noises, pretending to be asleep. Next day. You can have an affair, Naruto said to Wanda as she froze and stared at him surprised by what he said. Listen Wanda, I see marriage as a sacred thing, a bond between two loving people. Seeing you in pain and being neglected is an insult to that sacred bond. You deserve better. If he can't see how amazing you are, then he's an idiot and isn't worth your affection, he said to her as he left her momentarily to restock. Wanda looked at his retreating figure in awe from how honest, passionate, and powerful his words were. It rocked her to her core. An affair, she thought to herself, as never in her marriage had she thought about it, but when she thought about doing it with Naruto it was becoming very appealing. Few days later. Wanda had been watching her husband and godchild closely and saw the smiles they had on their face as they went on about their day, never once asking where she was or worrying or showing any concern, and with a few more attempts to stuck her husband, all failing due to him not wanting to have sex, she made up her mind about the affair. 1 hour later. You're asking me out, Naruto asked a blushing Wanda, her blush matching the color of her hair very easily. Wanda nodded as despite her usually stern attitude and her unreciprocated love she felt new to dating again. Sure, Naruto said with a smile. Wanda internally cheered as she left the bar to get ready, knowing when Naruto got off. Few hours later. Wanda smiled as Naruto took her to restaurant, not a fancy one but a real nice one. Guess chivalry isn't dead, she thought as she was getting the works on this date. He was holding her hand, pulling out her chair, paying for the meal, the whole gentlemanly experience. Naruto and Wanda talked about each other like always, their discussions getting a little deeper each time. Wanda smiled as she and Naruto discussed as she felt she could tell him anything. 1 hour later. Wanda was blushing as Naruto walked her through a park, her holding onto his arm. Wanna see something amazing? Naruto asked her, taking her off the path to a secluded part of the park. Wanda watched the moonlight illuminate this nature-rich part of the park. She was actually impressed how appealing the plant life was. Her mouth opened when she saw what looked like 1,000 fireflies flying begin to fly up and illuminate the area. Appealing, she thought in awe, and smiled at Naruto, finding this gesture to be a sweet and strong one. The date soon ended and Wanda found that it really ate that she had to fight Naruto to allow her to walk home by herself, as she loved the gesture but hated she couldn't let him do it for every obvious reason. Few minutes later. Wanda walked into her castle seeing Cosmo, and as he asked her how her day was, she didn't bother to hide that she was on a date and told him, but like she expected he didn't listen and went on if things had been normal. Next week. Wanda smiled as today was like any other when she visited Naruto, but unlike all the other times, as Naruto gave her her regular drink, they both felt a small spark appear between their fingers when they touched. Why did my magic/chakra do that? Wanda and Naruto thought to themselves, thinking as to why their power acted like that at that moment. After a few moments neither questioned it and went off as normal. Less than 3 weeks and I've been treated better by him than my husband, Wanda thought, feeling a little sad and happy about that. During their week of dating, Naruto was nothing but a gentleman. Despite her circumstances, still being married, he didn't treat her any less than he did before. 1 week later. Wanda played with her drink, stirring it a little as she looked at Naruto lovingly as she was keeping everyone out the bar now, and they were soon making out. Come on, do it, she thought as she decided a while back that she's have a CC with Naruto, trusting him with her heart. After work, okay, Naruto said to her, seeing her pout with slightly flushed cheeks which made him think of her as adorable. He kissed her on the cheek, which seemed to calm her down. Today is the day, Wanda thought, unconsciously rubbing her thighs. Few hours later. Wanda and Naruto barged through the door to Naruto's apartment, not separating from the other's lips, basically ripping the clothes off each other. Oh God, Wanda thought as she saw his 14 long and 3 wide PP, he's huge, she thought, slightly drooling as she slowly took him into her mouth, began to do him. Her eyes widened as she felt Naruto put a hand on the back of her head and began to move into her mouth. She thought as she enjoyed the attention and the SXL pleasure she was getting from Naruto's actions. Naruto smiled as he looked down at Wanda, seeing her face turning a bright shade of pink, and saw her eyes rolling up slightly. Wanda wanted to pleasure Naruto, wanting to know that she brought him pleasure, wanting to show her appreciation for all his affection and friendship. Naruto pulled out of her mouth and grabbed her tips and began to move into her rack. Wanda looked down and ate the part of Naruto's PP that peered out her melons and soon began kissing it. F me, she said, her blush easily making her face turn a brighter pink than her hair. She was surprised by the suddenness of Naruto picking her up and getting her on her hands and knees and screamed as he began to eat her out, making her let out RTCMM. Naruto smiled, feeling Wanda's CLMX spray his face. He smirked as he raised his PP and aligned it with her PP and began to slowly enter Wanda's PP. F Wanda, you are as tight as a version, you obviously have never been F properly, he said to her as he slowly began to move, hearing her MMM and steadily picked up the pace. Wanda MMM loudly from having Naruto's large PP and her not feeling any shame that she finally crossed the line with her marriage. I've found my man, she thought to herself as she knew she loved Naruto, loving him greatly. Naruto, I don't care about my husband, all I want is you, please don't leave me, she said slightly beggingly as she didn't want him to leave her. Naruto pulled her head to the side and kissed her, making her MMM even more. All Wanda could do was MMM and call out Naruto's name as he F her, showing every of her body affection, not leaving any part of her untouched, making Wanda go crazy with lust and pleasure. Few hours later. Wanda had a content smile as she nuzzled into Naruto's chest, feeling wave after wave of pleasure and bliss from their long F. Naruto rubbed her back as he smiled, seeing her smile. Both were soon brought out of their thoughts as they felt someone appear. Oh no, Wanda thought in fear. The hell, Naruto thought to himself. They both soon saw a large man with bulking muscles in the room, very glad they were covered by blankets. Wanda, you have committed infidelity with a human, and so such actions must be addressed. Human, you will lose all your memories of Wanda and live your life, he said, raising his giant wand which glowed brightly. Wanda internally screamed in panic as Jogan Vaughn's strangle wand glowed as it was aimed at Naruto, and the moment glow died she looked at him in fear and worry. Hey Wanda, Naruto said with a smirk, making her and Jorgen look at him in surprise. Mind filling me in? He asked curiously. Jorgen looked at his wand a little confused and tried again. Something supposed to happen? Naruto asked curiously as he watched the man try and try again, each attempt failing. Jorgen was angry as he saw this, but just as he was about to try again he got a phone call. Oh, excuse me, he said, answering the phone being polite. How are you not affected? Wanda asked, feeling Naruto up looking at him strangely while jumping for joy he didn't forget her. Mind filling me in on what should be affecting? Naruto asked as she then filled him in on what she was and what she used for power. Wanda was amazed he was accepting this so easily and wasn't at all put off by what she was and the secret she kept. Okay, you're off the hook and reassigned to this man, Jorgen said grumpily as he hanged up the phone and disappeared. Wanda was shocked and was screaming in joy as she could stay with Naruto full time, but wondered how this be. 1 month later. Wanda had a contempt smile as everything was perfect as ever since the day with Jorgen. Everything had been perfect with her and Naruto. She very much enjoyed living with him as they basically acted like newlyweds, doing a lot of activities together. Wanda was truly happy when she found out she wasn't the only one keeping secrets, as Naruto revealed the truth about his origins, being an immortal dimensional traveler. He even explained the source and nature of his power, which she considered a big thing. The days were filled with nothing but love as they spent time together trying new things that the other liked. It was always exciting as the two mainly did it for the other, but always had fun knowing the other was having fun. Wanda was also happy to learn that she could grant wishes still, and as time went by she had many thoughts and ideas about what that meant for their relationship. He did read the rule book, she thought, as Naruto read the entire rule book, knowing every technicality and loophole there was in it, which both impressed and aroused her as he wasn't just some pretty face. She often thought about her position with him. I mean, technically he can make me do anything, she thought to herself, as that thought made her exceptionally corny as she was bound to him, and even though he never abused that, she wished he did. Naruto soon decided to give and teach her chakra. While she thought it would be great to have a second power, she found it to be a little hard to access it, but after weeks of training she was getting the basics. Naruto, Wanda said as they sat on the couch resting, enjoying the other's presence as it calmed them. Yeah, Naruto asked her curiously. Can you make wishes for me to do what you want? Wanda said, burying her face in his chest as she was blushing. What do you mean? Naruto asked her, wanting details. Well, you rarely make wishes and I thought it'd be fun if you made them when we had a CC, Wanda said, nervously wanting to let him have all the power and control over her. Okay, Naruto said quickly. Oh really? Wanda said in surprise and excitement, wondering why he answered so fast. Yeah, I mean you can grant whatever wish you want, so it's not like we'll take it too far, Naruto said as he kissed her forehead. Wanda smiled as she remembered his very first wish was to allow her to not grant any wishes she didn't want, to something that truly touched the pink-headed fairy and made her love him all the more. Next day, Wanda was in true heaven as Naruto made a wish that would forever be her favorite. As he came home he wished for a box of chocolate and wished her to watch him eat it, something that made the chocolate addict a little sad, but after a few moments of teasing her as he ate the chocolate erotically, he had a piece between his lips and wished her to kiss him, and now after each chocolate melted he replaced it with a new different type of chocolate. Naruto smirked as he saw Wanda from the kissing. Knowing she was an addict for chocolate, he thought this would be a much better way for her to consume it. Wanda didn't even register that they ran out of chocolate as she just kept kissing Naruto, finding that more delightful than her addiction. I wish that you don't wear any underwear tomorrow, Naruto said as he went to the bathroom to clean off, leaving a panting and flushed Wanda. Granted, Wanda thought to herself, as underwear included a BR for her. Next day, Wanda was blushing as Naruto had yet to do anything to her, as all she had gotten that day was a few subtle touches which made her corny, as every time Naruto touched her it was magic. Naruto smiled as he was able to see Wanda's lowers were wet with juices from his teasing and noticed her tips were as hard as stone. Beg, he said to her with a smile, seeing her surprised look. He's making me beg, Wanda thought, a little frustrated, but that was nothing in how turned on she was. I want you to have a CC with me, she said to him. What was that? Be more clear, Naruto said with a teasing smirk. I want you to F me, Wanda said, as despite their SXL relationship she had yet to break from her shell and speak as lewdly as Naruto. Wanda, I want you to say what you want me to do to you, Naruto said, walking up to her and whispered hotly into her ear. Wanda could only hold in a whiny as she breathed at a quick pace. Okay, she said as she took a breath. I want you to F me, Naruto, I want you to be my MSTR, she said, as that was basically what this relationship was when they were in bed. He was her loving SXL MSTR and she was his very willing and loving woman ready to please him. I want you to tell me what you want and I'll do it, she said with a few tears in her eyes, as she wanted Naruto to just command her at this point. Naruto smiled at her. Unless we're in public I don't want you to wear underwear, he said to her, sternly smiling as he saw her shake her head eagerly and as he groped her peach with one hand and massaged her PP with the other. Yes MSTR, please just do whatever you wish to my body please, Wanda said as she not caring how RTC and whorish she sounded. She when he ripped her unders, exposing her lower O's, and again when he ripped off her shirt, leaving her greatly exposed, but she felt no shame whatsoever as she felt safe and comfortable to be naked in his presence, even welcomed the feeling. Naruto wasted no time as he bent her over the kitchen counter, making her stand up on her heels, as took her PP, making her scream each time she was barely off the ground, with each move screaming for her MSTR to get even rougher. 2 months later, Wanda stood in front of a full-length body mirror looking at a spot above her PP but below her WMB. I have a tattoo, she thought, as she was never one for such things, but she honestly liked it as it was a picture of a star exactly like her wand but had a spiral in the middle. It's like I'm his property, she thought, shivering from the thought as just moments ago, after achieving major control with her magic and chakra, her body absorbed her wand and became this tattoo. Naruto soon discovered that the tattoo would allow her to do wishes, and with her chakra she'd be able to do certain rule-breaking ones, but the most interesting he discovered was it responded to him completely, which made Wanda very happy. Wanda smiled as she posed, trying out poses, wanting to entice Naruto like always. He always leaves me satisfied and exhausted, she thought with a pleasured shiver running down her spine, but I never fully satisfy him, and that monster, she thought, as for every orgasm Naruto had he gave her over a dozen. Next week, Wanda smiled, serving drinks with Naruto, as ever since she began living with him the days didn't seem long enough. She soon decided she wanted to be even closer and asked if she could work with him. When it was time to close up they often F either on the tables, the floor, the bar, or even the storage room. Wanda screamed in pleasure as Naruto F her over the bar, a place she loved to be, as she got to serve drinks as she reminisced about the amazing SEC she had previously when Naruto F her on that spot. It honestly turned her on a lot. Naruto, leak for me, leak in me please, she said beggingly, her insides thirsty for his juices. She and slightly whined that she had many more orgasms and didn't receive his juices till much later. She didn't stop as she took every opportunity to have SEC with from The moment they left the now closed bar to the car where she immediately began to do him as he drove them home, into the apartment from multiple rooms not caring where. Next day. Wanda in pleasure as she felt her PP was slightly bruised from all the attention it got from Naruto. He won, she thought as she lost count of all the orgasms she had from the bar to the car to hear while Naruto had only a fraction of hers. I need another woman, she thought to herself as she tried a lot of things with Naruto. Adding a woman wouldn't be so bad, but who, she thought, thinking up a list. Few days later. You're 21, Wanda said, looking at an ID of a woman she knew very well. Idiot, used her real name, she thought, as a point to a fake ID was to use your picture but not the name. Yeah, so can I get my drink? Vicky said unpleasantly. You know Vicky, Wanda said in a calm but assertive voice, this has your real name and I know it's a fake cause I know you're 18, meaning you can be arrested and charged a heavy fine. You understand me, you can go to jail, she said as she smiled as Vicky sweated a little as she felt she was too pretty for jail and didn't want to lose money. I'll make you a deal, work here for free for a month and I won't tell the cops, you can keep the tips you make, she said with a smirk. Vicky immediately nodded at the offer. Stupid CNT, Wanda thought, as this was perfect. What better be to use as a PP sleeve, she thought to herself as Vicky was a CNT in every manner of the word, so Wanda had no problem with Naruto putting her in her place and the very thought excited her. Better enjoy wear because my man will destroy you, she thought, as even though she moved on from Timmy and Cosmo she still held some platonic care for them, and remembering Vicky being the evil witch that she is was a good enough reason for her to enjoy Naruto breaking her. 2 weeks later. Vicky entered the bar an hour early as she had to set things up, and as she did she heard noises in the back. As she went to investigate she was shocked to see Naruto and Wanda. Oh F Naruto, F my PP, Wanda said as she without shame, stuff me to the brim with your juices, paint my PP white, she said with a lewd smile and grin. Such a dirty SLT I have, Naruto said as he slapped her tips. Vicky rubbed her thighs as she began to watch the two have incredibly hot SEC. Few hours later. Hey Vicky, Wanda said, pressing herself against the redhead. Vicky became a little uncomfortable as she wondered what the woman wanted. I know you were watching us, Wanda said, breathing hotly into her ear. Vicky stiffened very much hearing that. How about we make a wager? I know you like money, how's $1 million sound? Wanda said with a smirk, seeing the look in Vicky's eyes. You win you get the $1 million, but if I win, well, you become mine, or rather Naruto's, she said with a smile. What's the wager? Vicky asked, wanting the $1 million. Easy, you have to make Naruto juices, Wanda said, seeing Vicky blush and then nod. Perfect, she said as she ripped off Vicky's clothing, not counting her panties, and let me get you ready, she said, fingering Vicky's already wet PP and soon brought her now wet fingers to her face, tasting a finger. Here, she said, forcing her finger into Vicky's mouth, making her taste her own juices. Few minutes later. F me already, Vicky said in desperation and anger as Naruto wasn't F her, merely rubbing his PP between her folds. Come on, F me, she thought, her mind drifting from her goal to win and get $1 million. No, Naruto said as he continued to rub his PP between her thighs and began roughly kissing her neck. You lose, Wanda said with a smirk as Vicky was gushing out an orgasm. Lay down, Naruto said to Vicky, who panted and nodded and laid down. Wanda, get on top of her, he said commandingly. Yes, Wanda said, getting on top of Vicky and as she felt Naruto spank her. I know about your little wager, Wanda, Naruto said, roughly grabbing her peach before roughly spanking it. Who are you to think about betting with my money? But it doesn't matter, I am collecting on this bet, he said as he rammed his PP into Vicky, making her scream in pleasure. Wanda could only in pleasure as Naruto punished her by spanking her peach, playing with her oles, and pinching her tips. Are you gonna misbehave anymore? Naruto asked her, grpng her tips. No mstr, I won't ever, Wanda said as she cried out in pleasure. Vicky didn't say anything as her mind was being overworked by the pleasure she was feeling. Can we make her aware for you mstr, make her dance like strpr? Wanda asked, looking Vicky deep into her eyes. How does that sound, Vicky? Naruto asked, not ceasing his thrsts. Yes, Vicky said, her tongue hanging out of her mouth. Make me do whatever pleasure, this amazing is worth it, she said as she cried as she climaxed again. It is, Wanda said as she let out a shiver of a 1 week later. Wanda smiled as she wore a maid uniform watching Vicky twerk for Naruto as he sat on the couch. Vicky was loudly as she felt Naruto's pee get in between her large cheeks. Wanda smiled as she went over and kissed Vicky, appreciating her services as she helped her pleasure Naruto, but she still wasn't satisfied. Few days later. Naruto Namikaze, a blonde woman that looked like Wanda, sat sitting on his couch. She wore a tight and small dress that hugged her large cup melons and curvy body, easily allowing him to see her pink panties and her round peach. "Hello," she said with a grin. Wanda's sister, Naruto asked curiously, as the similarities between them were uncanny. "Guilty," the woman said with a smile. "The name is Blonda," she said with a smile as she walked with some sway over to him. "Let me be your fairy," she said with a smile as she persuaded Jorgen years ago to keep her informed about Wanda and anything juicy about her that she could use for blackmail, trading trivial things like autographs, clothing and the like from her show. "Why?" Naruto asked her curiously. "Because Wanda would be ruined," Blonda said with a smile, as she knew that after Wanda's affair and being disowned by her newest charge she was also sleeping with, she'd never have another godchild ever again. Naruto walked to her, backing her into a corner and looked directly into her eyes. "And tell me, Blonda," he said in calm demanding tone, "why would I want you?" he asked her curiously. Blonda blushed, as this was new, as men normally gave her what she wanted. "You said you wanted to be my godparent. You think you can replace Wanda?" Naruto asked her, removing his unders and underwear, showing off his irked PP. "If Wanda everyday putting my PP in her mouth, PP, and peach we F for hours, and you think you can take her duties?" he asked, chuckling slightly. Blonda blushed in anger and embarrassment, feeling his PP on her thigh. "Wanda never gets enough, always begging for my PP, wanting to milk it for juices," Naruto said as he began kissing her neck, receiving no protest. "That is because she is a SLT," Blonda said as she "What you need is a real woman," she said with a grin as she decided to kiss his neck as well, wanting to return the pleasure. She in surprise when Naruto ripped off her dress, leaving her in her pink panties and BR. "You think you can handle all of this?" Naruto said, rubbing his PP against her panty-clad PP. "Maybe I'll make you my fairy godmother," he said with a smirk. "Come on, Blonda, do this and Wanda is gone, an outcast of fairy world," Blonda thought to herself. She strppd herself down and struck some poses for him before she crawled to him and began kissing his PP. "Is he really human?" she thought to herself as she kissed his PP, leaving lipstick marks on his PP. "It, he's not some weak human like Jorgen said," she thought, thinking Naruto would have been putty in her hands, making her think if she flashed him and maybe do a few things, but he was proving a bigger challenge than she thought. "You can do better than that. Your sister is usually choking on my PP at this point," Naruto said teasingly, knowing it angered her and wounded her pride, being compared second to her sister. Blonda growled slightly as she decided to take his PP into her mouth, having much difficulty, only able to take him halfway. "Your sister took me to my base," Naruto said, seeing her turn red from anger and embarrassment as she struggled to take more of him. "Here, let me give you a hand," he said, placing both hands behind the back of her head and forced the residential of his PP down her. Blonda struggled to breath as he her thrt, stretching her out, her face turning red and her eyes filled with tears. "You really wet, Blonda. I think I see a small puddle on the floor," Naruto said with a smile. "Could it be this is turning you on?" he said teasingly. Blonda wanted to look away and deny his claim, but with his hand firmly on the back of her head all she could do was look at him and take it. After a few minutes Naruto let her go, making her choke a little. "My sister really has to be a SLT to let this human have his way with her," Blonda thought as she took deep breaths. "There, you had your fun, so get rid of Wanda," she said to him. "Yeah, we are nowhere close to done," Naruto said, smiling at the look of fear and surprise on her face. Blonda could taste his juices in her mouth. He had to CLMX, he had to, she thought, as she was good friends with Cupid and knew human men didn't have much stamina, and even if they did they have shown signs of exhaustion. Naruto didn't even look winded. Is this just pre-juices, she thought in shock as all the juices in her mouth felt like it should have been a juices. "Come here," Naruto said, bring her to the couch, and as he down he placed her on his lap, her legs on both side of him, his PP gently thrusting between her PP lips. "I respect you, Blonda, you know what you want and you'll really put yourself out there, so I'm gonna make you an offer, something you'll really like," he said teasingly. "What?" Blonda said as she tried to hold in her and keep a straight face. "You wanna win some zappies?" Naruto said, hearing her. "Hitcha How? Blonda asked as she wanted to win more zappies and take her acting to the next level. If this man who was now her godchild could give her that, she'd do anything. I can make you a better actress. I mean, look at you showing such raw emotion, Naruto said, summoning a mirror, letting Blonda look at herself. Blonda had to admit he was right, her expressions did look raw and powerful. If you promise I will get zappies, I'll do it, I'll be yours, she said as she blushed at him. You have my word, Naruto said as he kissed her neck, making Blonda scream in pleasure. Now will you do anything I say? He asked her huskily into her ear. Yes, Blonda said with some tears of pleasure in her eyes. Bring out your wand and swear it, Naruto said, as this was a magical deal. If terms were set up and put down, the contract was made and would be permanent once said contract was complete, and if it weren't, the contract would be void. I swear, Blonda said as her wand shined, as she basically just signed away her body for trophies, and if Naruto succeeded he'd have her as his forever, and in the meantime till then she practically was. Wanda, Naruto said, calling out to his first fairy. Blonda watched in shock as Wanda seeming appeared out of thin air, wearing heels, black mesh stockings, and a garter belt with no panties, holding a camera that was locked onto her. Don't worry Blonda, this'll be for our private use, Wanda said teasingly as she shook the camera in her hands slightly. Now lick, she said, referring to her heels when she placed her heel on the table, wanting Blonda to kiss it, wanting to see her sister beneath her. Blonda just glared and said, no, but then her eyes widened in shock as Naruto slapped her peach. I think I forgot to mention, you said, you do anything I said, meaning if I say ordered you to listen to each and every one of Wanda's orders as if they were my own, you'd have to do it, Naruto said, seeing the satisfaction in Wanda's eyes and the slight fear in Blonda. I'll ask again, Wanda said, motioning to the tip of her heel. Blonda knew she had to do it as Naruto basically owned her now, not only as her godchild but with the magical deal. She kneeled down and began kissing Wanda's heel. Wanda said as if she were receiving physical pleasure seeing her sister like that, completely at her mercy, unable to resist her advances should she try or attempt, and the fact she'd have to do everything she said was icing on the cake. Next day. Blonda was currently in the kitchen making lunch in nothing but an apron. She had a blush on her face, but her face was normal. Me is gonna help my acting, she thought to herself, as if she didn't see the improvements of it she would have thought it was crazy. She couldn't stop her heart from racing as Naruto promised she was gonna push her limits, embarrass her to no end, make her do things she'd have never considered. Hey, Naruto said, grabbing her peach, and began to kiss her neck. Blonda had to admit she liked this loving affection he gave her as it felt truthful and honest, which made the deal she made that much easier. She in delight as Naruto began to move into her, making cooking that much more risky as she tried to fight the pleasure she was receiving. Next day. Blonda was very embarrassed as Naruto told her she'd be doing some house cleaning and gave her a French-maid outfit which was a little tight, as if she even tried to bend over or stand up her peach and PP would be on full display, and she was having a tough time keeping her rack from spilling out. Oops, Wanda said as she purposely spilled a glass of water on the floor in the kitchen. Blonda glared at her as she got a sponge and got down on all fours and began to clean it up. I bet Naruto would give you a real mess to clean, Wanda said teasingly, staring at her sister's oles. Blonda blushed at that, thinking about Naruto making her serve him like this. She was brought out of her thoughts as Wanda spanked her peach and gropped it. Wanda felt her tattoo glow, knowing she wanted to make some wishes of a SXL nature revolving around her sister. I have to wait, she thought, fighting the urge as her MSTR instructed her not to do anything to her sister. Next day. Okay, I feel we're ready to test your acting, Naruto said to Blonda, who smiled and squealed as he handed her a small script. She ran out to begin reading it. 1 hour later. Blonda marched into Naruto's room, not even caring that he was her sister. This is a porno, she yelled in anger and rage as after she got through the first few pages she saw it become completely SXL. Yeah, Naruto said over Wanda's loud, unashamed I can't do this, it'll destroy my career, Blonda said in rage and fear as he technically owned her. Making her do this was in his power, but if she did she wouldn't get a zappy, and he knew that, so she had trouble figuring out why he wanted her to do this if it meant he'd lose. Oh, me and Wanda have that handled. Porno is gonna be uploaded to a site in Fairy World, but thanks to Wanda's stronger powers no one will know it's you when I say I wish Blonda won't be recognized in any porno she does with me or any other woman, he said as Wanda's tattoo glowed, showing the wish was granted. Blonda relaxed a little, but still to star in a porno she felt nervous. I'm assuming you picked the genre, she asked her sweaty sister, who just smiled at her as she bounced on Naruto's PP. Few hours later. This is my father's life's work. He spent his whole life building this family and you're trying to steal it from me, Blonda said, wearing a white dress shirt, a gray vest, a gray skirt, and black stiletto heels. You may be BLD, but you've not worked a single thing into this. Your father was a great man. You didn't contribute to any of this, Naruto said as he was dressed in an old mobster-like suit. Blonda reached for a phone to call some low-level thugs who worked for her, and they were too dumb to think for themselves, and as soon as she called them she heard the line was dead. Yeah, those two half-wits are dead, and don't bother calling anyone else. No one is gonna follow you, Naruto said to her confidently. Blonda glared at him with intensity and calmed down. What do you want? She asked, thinking there had to be something he wanted from her. No, what do you want from me, and what are you willing to give to get it? Naruto asked her as he enjoyed this, seeing her at her low point. Blonda's fist clenched in anger as he had her. I need to be part of this family, she said, as this was her life. And what will you do for me? Naruto asked her, grinning at her. Blonda knew what he was suggesting and glared at him as she got off her chair and approached him, getting down on her knees. Undoing his lowers, she pulled out his semi-irked PP. You're big, she said. Look away from him as she jerked him off with both of her hands. Naruto just stared at her as she tried to get him to leak, seeing her HND job wasn't doing much. F leak you bstrd, Blonda said in anger as she felt insulted not being able to make him leak. Gotta do more than that to make me leak, Naruto said as he pulled her up and put her on her desk and began ripping off her vest. Hey, Blonda said as he ripped her skirt. No panties, naughty girl, Naruto said teasingly. Blonda looked away in embarrassment as he then started to rub his PP against her slit. You F me and I stay in the family, she asked him, looking very embarrassed. Sure, why not, Naruto said before thrusting fully into Blonda, making her scream in lust as she climaxed from just that move. Blonda could see stars as he began to move in and out of her. Harder than before as he picked up the pace, making her let out screams of pleasure. F, she thought repeatedly as it was becoming harder and harder to think with him. F the SHT out of her. Later. Ladies and gentlemen, let me reintroduce a familiar face to the family, Naruto said as he had Blonda right next to him with a blush on her face. BSTRD, Blonda said, mumbling under her breath as she had a VBRTR in her PP, which was currently at level as she was struggling to keep her contained. Now, with the recent passing of her father and me being the new head of the family, especially since this one is now my B, Naruto said with a smirk on his face as he tore off Blonda's skirt, showing off her wet PP. I say we celebrate, drinks are on me, he said with a smirk, but I have stuff to handle with this salty wear, he said, ripping off her top, leaving her bare naked. Blonda blushed as she was now getting F again, her PP and peach in every visible and exposing position as her sister recorded it. Few weeks later. Gotta say, a lot of people bought that porno, Naruto said, showing Blonda the numbers of people who purchased the porno, and like I said, no one knew it was us, he said as he and Blonda were in the clear of people never finding them out. And your show ratings have increased, he said as Blonda had increased her acting abilities after the SXL acts he made her commit in the porno. Blonda felt nervous after the porno but was somewhat proud of the reviews she got from both her show and the porno, seeing more and more reviews and viewers each and every hour. 1 month later. Blonda felt ecstatic as she had 24 zappies in front of her. He held up his end of the deal, Wanda said, sounding both happy and superior over her sister, especially seeing the matching tattoo her sister had over her PP now, as Naruto had trained her like he did her. Blonda nodded as she knew she was now and would forever be Naruto's B and her sister's, since she had to do everything her sister asked of her. Few days later. Blonda had to say she loved how things were no longer having any malice for her sister and was enjoying Naruto's human pet Vicky, the only one she could command and dominante, having the woman always submit and do as she told. Wanda had enjoyed watching her sister become part of the HRM, enjoying her sink into the role very easily, and she enjoyed that there was no more malice between them, but that didn't stop her from punishing Blonda, putting her in her place, making her sister her personal F-toy whenever their lover wasn't using either of them. Few weeks later. This is nice, Wanda said as Naruto and her were in a very fancy restaurant in Fairy World, and luckily for them the restaurant was mostly empty, and despite the whispers amongst the staff this was nice. Oh god, she thought to herself, spotting Jorgen sitting alone, and their eyes met and he smiled, waving at her, which was odd as whenever Jorgen was happy it usually meant SHT was gonna happen or that he was gonna try and order them. Few minutes later. He has a wife? Naruto asked Wanda quietly. Surprisingly, Wanda said as she felt bad for the Tooth Fairy as Jorgen was so himself. Wait, back up, what are you asking? Naruto asked Jorgen curiously. I need some company for my date, Jorgen said to them. You don't have many friends, do you? Naruto asked as he was assuming the date life was getting boring. Jorgen just glared at him. Few minutes later. I'm so bored, Wanda thought as having dinner with Jorgen and the Tooth Fairy was not how she saw her evening going. Poor Bee, she saw, seeing the bored and stressed look of the Tooth Fairy. Any fairy could tell Jorgen would be a PSS poor lover, she thought to herself, as Jorgen was a child in a man's body at best. Tooth Fairy was acting as civil as possible, but in reality she felt all her SXL frustration rise to the surface as she looked at Naruto's teeth. He makes Chip Skylarks look rotten, she thought to herself, and was not only attracted to his teeth but to his body, as she liked muscular men. But Jorgen was over the line. She had F-cup melons, a curvy model-like body that was well displayed by her shoulderless white top that clung to her body, and a bubbly plump peach that made her thong-like underwear seem a size too small. Wanda smirked as she hated Jorgen, and seeing the look of longing for Naruto in the Tooth Fairy's eyes, she was glad for once, as thanks to Jorgen's giant size the rest of them were closer together. She unzipped Naruto's lowers and freed his PP, glad the table was high enough so no one saw his PP out. The Tooth Fairy, blushing as she saw it but said nothing and stole glances at his PP as Jorgen, who was talking and flexing his muscles, didn't notice whatsoever. He's so big, Tooth Fairy thought, rubbing her thighs slightly as she stared at his PP as Wanda jerked him off. He's much bigger than Jorgen and seems to have much more stamina, she thought, as Jorgen wasn't that big even by human standards, and just by her touch he leaked. One and done, she thought to herself, but when she looked at Naruto's fairly large TSTCLS she knew he could shower any woman in his juxes. She wanted to whine when Wanda put his PP away. We'll be right back, we need to go to the ladies' room, Wanda said, dragging the Tooth Fairy with her to the bathroom. Few minutes later. That bad, Wanda said as Tooth Fairy filled her in on her relationship with Jorgen. I feel so trapped, I thought I was in love but he's so bland, Tooth Fairy said as she felt like her life was draining away with Jorgen in her life. Wanda smirked as she locked the restroom door and checked to see if there was anyone inside. When all was clear she raised her dress to the Tooth Fairy. Hey, PP looks so wet, Tooth Fairy thought as Wanda was not wearing panties and her juices were going down her legs. My PP is never dry when I'm with Naruto, he F me like a woman, I belong to him. His other lovers, even when they assist me, can't put him down, Wanda said with a smile. Other lovers, Tooth Fairy thought to herself, finding that incredibly hot. This tattoo is my wand, now I can make any wish I want. Being his woman has its perks, Tooth, Wanda said, knowing the woman liked to be strong. Think about it, great man, great SEC, and unbelievable power, she said with a grin as her tattoo lit up. Tooth could feel all the power that radiated off of Wanda and the pleased look she seemed to have and the love that practically burned in her eyes. That is what she wanted for herself and what she wanted a partner to give her, and since Jorgen proved incapable she chose to take the opportunity. Few days later. Ah, Tooth said as all she could do was as Wanda right into her office and started fingering her, looking at her with such a naturally amused smile she felt so powerless, which was the case as she felt Wanda's magic was even stronger than a few days ago. The most sought-out fairy in all of Fairy World, and she's putty in my hands, Wanda thought as she had to admit she, like most women fairies, hated Tooth as she was claimed to be the most appealing fairy. Seeing her like this now like a cheap common were made Wanda feel a little more ceasy than she already felt. Hurry up, Tooth, I want these panties drenched in you juices, she said, picking up the pace with her fingering. Tooth only louder as Wanda was clear why she wanted her panties. She wanted to present them to Naruto, showing him how desperate she was to get F. I wanna be more than just his SLT, she thought to herself. Dumb B, all she's doing is hurting herself, Wanda thought, knowing what was going through the proud woman's mind, but it was all pointless as Naruto loved all his lovers and treated them like queens, but we're his SLTS and C sleeves in bed, she thought hotly, getting wet herself. Tooth cried out a mmm when Wanda hit her sweet spot, making her cry out in bliss. She mmm some more when Wanda aggressively pulled her panties off her. "Here," Wanda said as she took off her panties and stuffed them into Tooth's mouth. "Naruto F me before coming here. I hope you enjoy our taste," Wanda said as she poofed out. Tooth slowly took the fabric out of her mouth and looked at it before giving it a few licks, able to taste the separate juices, feeling even more aroused and embarrassed. 1 week later. Tooth felt very embarrassed as Wanda had made her do as much RTC things, preparing her for Naruto, and now she sat on her bed in her bathrobe after taking a shower with Wanda, who fingered her furiously, making her pee wetter than the shower ever did. Wanda had instructed her that Naruto would summon her, making her feel such excitement, wondering what he had in store for her, as Wanda said to her, "The things I'm doing to you are nothing compared to what Naruto does. He pushes past the breaking point. And even further, making you realize how much there is to truly experience. Any minute now," Wanda said, taking in this moment of Tooth before Naruto got his hands on her. "I can never break a woman like he can," she thought to herself, as she knew she could make a woman like Tooth bend past their limits, but Naruto did it so skillfully it was like trying to copy an artist. Tooth was suddenly engulfed in smoke, and soon after, waving it away, she saw herself in an alley, Naruto leaning on the wall. "I'm still in fairy world," she thought in slight panic as she could hear people in the distance, and before she could panic she was silenced by Naruto forcing his lips against hers, and soon he undid her belt to her robe and threw it aside, leaving Tooth in nothing but her slippers. He got her close to the wall and picked up one of her legs as he unzipped his lowers, his irked pee completely free. She placed one hand on the wall to keep her balance as Naruto just thirsted into, making her let out a rather loud squeak. "She's trying to keep quiet," Naruto thought with a grin, seeing that as a challenge, and began to move himself into her harder and faster, wanting to hear her mm. "Can't let anyone hear me," Tooth thought, as if anyone saw her she'd be known as a total wear all over fairy world. Naruto was not easing up on her and was thinking she may have had a certain KNK in particular. He lightly began to bite on her neck, hearing let out a very audible scream, and soon her flushed face became even redder. "Oh Tooth, I found your weakness," he thought, as he then gained a grin. Now smiling deviously, he cupped one of her tips and began eating and biting on her NPL, making her unleash her mm. "F, he's better than I thought," Tooth thought, her mind going numb to pleasure, as this was heaven to her, getting a proper F, having a strong man put her in her place, making her his be. All she could feel was euphoria, and screamed when she felt him leaking inside of her. "It's so hot," she thought, as his juices was so unbelievably hot inside her, stuffing her pee to the brim, and as he pulled out just as she was about to him in disappointment, feeling empty without his pee, he picked her up into a full Nelson and thirsted himself into her peach, making her scream as he invaded her peach. God, when was the last time she got any? She's as tight as a virgin, Naruto thought to himself, as Tooth's souls were really clamping down on his pee. Tooth no longer restrained her as she just wanted more and more pleasure, wanting Naruto to just use her body to pleasure his pee, wanting him to drench her insides and her body in his juices. "F me Naruto, F the SHT out of me," she said, not wanting him to be gentle with her. "You might not be saying that in the future," Naruto said, not one to turn down an opportunity, as he began slamming into her peach with much strength. "F my peach is gonna gaping and bruised," Tooth thought, reaching new heights of nirvana, loving the pleasure and pain she was feeling. "F," she screamed as Naruto was leaking again, stuffing her peach as he did her pee with a massive juices. "You're AF horse," she said, as not only was he built like one, he had the stamina of one. She was surprised when Naruto pulled out of her and quickly forced her to her knees the moment her feet touched the ground, and began slapping his pee against her face. "Put those nice tips to good use," Naruto said, patting her head like a pet. Tooth didn't even question his request as she wrapped her tips around his pee and began giving him a melons combo blwjb, tasting the juices coated pee that was inside her lower oles, feeling dirty and salty tasting it, after all that getting even more turned on. Naruto smiled, seeing Tooth's eyes roll up slightly as she had a massive blush on her face as her THRT was being stretched out like all her other oles that into contact with Naruto's pee. Tooth felt her mind begin to feel hazy, feeling like she was losing herself to the pleasure. Next day. Tooth blushed as Wanda sat on her desk looking amused as she had presented her pictures that Naruto himself took of her in the alley, all of them making her look like a total, where the pictures had her in RTC positions, making her look as desperate as she felt when they were taken. She was covered in sweat and juices, fully exposed, and looked and felt like aware with where it was taken. "Do I really look like that?" she asked, her voice quiet and embarrassed. Yes, but the real thing is always better, Wanda said teasingly, wanting to rid her of this shyness she had. So when will you file for a divorce? She asked as they were in a similar position with neglectful spouses. I want Naruto to F me more while I'm Jorgen's wife, Tooth said as it felt very hot and RTC to have him F her while she was still married. Wanda smiled at her with respect, understanding the feeling as she felt the same way. Time to get what is owed to me, she thought as the affair she was having was losing its SXL edge, but she did have one final use for her marriage to Cosmo. 1 week later. You are going to leave my son, Mama, Cosma said, her voice filled with pure joy hearing that from Wanda. She wore a cyan-colored dress that matched her light green hair. The dress fit her well, outlined her CC thick and plump curvy figure, her large EE cup melons which was equal to Wanda's own melons and matched it in many ways, and the dress did little to hide the shape of her large round and plump peach. Yes, but you have to do something if you want me to leave him. Do it and I leave, Cosmo, Wanda said with a smile. Think about it, Cosmo, you do it, win and I leave, she said with a smile, knowing she was giving the woman to get everything she wanted. And what do you if I fail? Cosmo said, confident in her victory. A blank check. I can get anything I want for you when you lose, Wanda said to her. Done, Cosmo said with a smirk. Okay, I want to make a magical deal that you will not reveal the bet or any information I have connecting to the bet or secrets I have, Wanda said, wanting to make the magical deal as it'd be risky not to make it. Alright, Cosmo said as she agreed immediately. Egocentric B, Wanda thought to herself as Cosmo was making this too easy. I'm cheating on your weak PP of a son, she said, seeing the surprise in the MLF's eyes. He's ignored me and doesn't care about our marriage. I'm returning his neglect with interest, she said in calm tone. But enough of that, you agreed to whatever challenge I set, and that is I want you to F my lover. She said, smiling, seeing the shock in the woman's eyes. But not only that, you have to make him leak first, she said with a grin, telling her about Naruto, telling her much about her lover but not secrets he wouldn't want her to reveal. How only you would fall so low as to take a human for a lover. He'll be putty in my hands, he'll get to experience a real woman and not some harlot, Cosmo said, looking at Wanda with a glare. Wanda merely smiled as she was gonna watch the bee she hated most get broken in by her MSTR. Next day. Things a mother must do for her children, Cosmo said as she put on a cyan one-piece-like lingerie which showed a lot of melons and clung to her body tightly, baby blue fishnet stockings showing off her very nice, smooth, and thick thighs, and she was also wearing some navy blue stiletto heels. This should be over quick, she said, talking to herself, thinking the human would when she showed some of her feminine charms, and if not she would just need to give him some light touches to make him orgasm. Are you ready? Wanda asked with a small grin on her face. Due to watch a real woman work, Wanda. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll learn something, Cosmo said superiorly. Oh, you dumb bee, you have no idea how badly you are gonna get wrecked. Naruto will own you, Wanda thought, knowing Cosmo thought she had the superior skills, but there was no way that woman had Naruto's skills. She was in for a rude awakening when this was gonna get started. 1 hour later. Dutiful housewife, not gonna lie, not a bad angle, Wanda thought as she played it herself with Naruto, but right now she was watching Cosmo cook for Naruto, still wearing her lingerie and heels. Cosmo smiled as she had to admit she was having some fun, as she could feel the look of longing in Naruto's eyes, and it was exciting to be so desired, as it had been a long time since she got a look like that. Guess I can take my time, she thought as she served him another plate of food as he was eating everything she made and more, something she liked to see very much. Wanda just smiled as Cosmo got trapped in the appeal that was Naruto. Cosmo saw Naruto drop a utensil and bent over to pick it up, not realizing her mistake as Naruto massaged her peach before giving it a few light spanks. Come on Cosmo, you can take this, she thought to herself, regaining her nerve as she stood up and pretended as if nothing happened. He's gonna try even harder, Wanda thought, as those were just love taps. She really wanted to see Naruto do more to her mother-in-law. Naruto smiled as when she got close to him he pulled her on his lap. Feed me, he said to her commandingly. Cosmo had to hold in a shiver as she picked up a fork. This is my chance, she thought, pushing her chest forward, wanting him to catch an eyeful of her melons as she fed him. Why don't you dash, she was thinking, stopping as she felt something large under her rear. Is that his PP, she thought in slight fear. Why hasn't he leaked yet, she thought, thinking if he was aroused he should have leaked by now. Naruto moved the part of her lingerie covering her melons to the side and began eating on her tips, and as soon as she began he started to finger her PP. God, look at her Wanda thought, laughing a little of how easy Cosmo was. Don't give in, don't let him. Cosma was thinking, her thoughts always being interrupted by jolts of pleasure, each jolt stronger than the last, and suddenly she screamed as she climaxed. Wanda smiled as she heard that and watched as Naruto placed her on the table, moving his food aside, ripping her outfit off her body and spread her legs and rubbed her slit. F me, Cosma thought as she was really enjoying herself now, wanting to be ravished by the strong man before her. She thought, letting out tears of pleasure as he rammed his PP into her PP and louder when he latched onto one of her tips. Naruto heard Cosma's screaming and it was like music to his ears, making more corny and more aggressive. After a rough session of Cosma's underused CN, Naruto roared as he finally leaked inside her. Cosma was sweating profusely and picked herself up. I'll be back in a moment, she said, kissing Naruto, and wobbled over to Wanda. Look, I made him leak, I win, she said as she panted from exhaustion, feeling superior. Wow, you got him to leak, I'm impressed, Wanda said, using her finger to trail Cosma's slit and taste the combined juices of her and Naruto's juices. Enjoy SLT, enjoy the taste of a real woman, Cosma said with a smile, feeling amazing, and you handsome can have me anytime, she said, winking at Naruto. Oh, he will, because I won the bet, you stupid bee, Wanda said, still smiling. What? Cosma said in surprise. I made him leak, she said, as that was the requirement for her to win. You did, but the requirement for you to win was to make Naruto leak first. You climaxed on his lap, meaning you leaked first, meaning you lost, Wanda said, getting in her face. Cosma paled as she realized the moment she leaked was the moment she lost. And you gave me a blank check, Wanda said, smiling at the look of fear in Cosma's eyes as she gave her a blank check, giving her free rein to ask for anything of the woman. And you belong to Naruto now, she said with a smile. Few days later, Cosma woke up feeling someone eating her out, and when she looked she saw Naruto's human lover Vicky eating her out. She enjoyed it, making the human submit to her, as she quickly learned that this woman was a toy, a pet for the pleasure of Naruto and his lovers, often seeing her dance for the others' pleasure like strpr, and aware, often being treated as such, as sometimes after the others were done with her they often gave her a single dollar or pocket change. This is pleasant, Cosma thought, liking being Naruto's lover very much, being treated like a woman, Naruto's woman, feeling all the love and pleasure she could ever want. 1 hour later, Cosma was enjoying some tea as she was playing with Vicky, who was now in a French-made costume which barely contained or hid anything. Hello Cosma, Blonda said, coming in, sitting next to the woman. Cosma tensed up seeing her, as Blonda had sent her some looks, ones of anger, and it made her a little fearful. Vicky, leave us, Blonda said as the woman did as instructed, and as she left she gave her peach a hard spank, getting a loud She smiled as she saw a trail of juices in the path that Vicky left. I want you to know, Cosma, I loved our times together in the past, she said, as they had often gotten together and talked trash about Wanda, but those times are over and I feel you need to be punished, she said, getting up and walked behind her. Cosma didn't look behind her as she was afraid of what Blonda was gonna do to her. She when Blonda grabbed her tips. I love my sister very much now and know she hasn't FU yet, so I'm going to prepare you, because let's be honest, she runs this HRM for Naruto and she doesn't leave any of us untouched, she said with a grin, as she knew that Cosma had spied on a few sessions she and the others had with Naruto. Cosma knowing she couldn't do much, as she had seen the powers of Naruto's lovers and their power was immense, making rule-defying wishes with their special star tattoos above their PPs. Stand up, Blonda said as she let her go, and Cosma did as told. Face me, she said sternly, and as she did she smiled, seeing the woman's face looking away from her. She then ripped the top half of her dress, freeing her tips. No br, you're learning, she said with a smile, as all the women that belonged to Naruto didn't bother with underwear unless the outfit they wore needed it, and even then it was gone as soon as they arrived here, and in this house they sometimes chose to just be naked. Cosma felt her tips harden seeing her look at her tips so intently. You know you're a MLF, right? What makes FU so much hotter? I bet Naruto enjoys FU a lot more since it's so much hotter, Blonda said to her, licking her lips. Cosma smiled, being complimented and praised. She as Blonda began to spank her very hard, making her peach turn a bright red. Blonda smirked, seeing the ignorance on the woman's face about what was to leak, as this was a prelude of what to leak for her. Few weeks later. Do you understand what I'm going to do to the both of you? Wanda said to Tooth and Cosma, who both nodded, having blushes on their faces as they looked at the camera that would be recording them. All three women had a domino mask on. Both women were blushing as they were being filmed as well due to their erotic outfits. Tooth was currently wearing a cupless leather corset going down from under her melons. Down the middle was a fishnet opening showing off her stomach. Cosmo was wearing a leather dress, her melons and PP fully exposed as only the sides were fully leathered while the front and back had a crisscross pattern. My name is MSTRSW and he is your MSTR, Wanda said with a smile. You are gonna go to Naruto and you are all mine, Wanda said as Naruto took Tooth and she took Cosmo. Cosmo as her MSTRS played with her, grabbing a handful of her peach and then began to play with her tips. I hope you know, Wanda said whispering into her ear, that I'm going to take my sweet time your body whenever I want, taking my revenge after all these years, she said as she smiled, feeling the woman shiver, and look at her, she said, making the woman look at Tooth bouncing on Naruto's PP, screaming out like a where, every day forever, she said as both women got wet thinking about being F'd by Naruto. 1 hour later. Cosmo was covered in sweat and her own juices as Wanda had been playing with her body, finding every nook and cranny, and even covered her in her own juices, soaking her to the bone. How is she? Naruto said, surprising both women as he penetrated Wanda's PP. Fantastic, Wanda said with a smile, her PP in clenching around my fingers. I know she wants something bigger, she said with a lewd grin. Naruto said with a grin as he thought to himself as he pushed Wanda forward, making her get on top of Cosmo and began thrusting into both of their wet pussies. Ah, MSTR, thank you, my PP needs you, Cosmo said, screaming in pleasure. SLT, Wanda said, looking at Tooth, getting the dazed woman's attention. Get the camera, I want this to be up and close, she said, dominantly wanting to do something. Later with Cosmo. Oh, Cosmo said, seeing a tape with a note taped to it. Play me and get a brownie, he said, reading the note slowly, and immediately ran inside and played it, wanting that brownie. He immediately put it in and stared dumbly as an RTC porno began to play. Cosmo, I have someone who wants to say something to you, Wanda said, still wearing her domino mask. See me, my little SLT, she said, bringing Cosmo over to her and ripped of her domino mask in her own, shocking Cosmo. Now tell him, she said, smiling. Thank you very much, honey. Thanks to you, mama has a new man and you've got a new daddy. I know you're upset about this, but be happy, now me and Wanda are getting along just like you always wanted. Cosmo said, her tongue wagging as Naruto petted into her peach while Wanda walked up to her, pulling her by her hair before looking at the camera. F you, Cosmo, and I'll be F your mama for the rest of her life. Wanda said before kissing GRPNG her peach, making sure the camera was catching it. Cosmo soon had the brownie he was promised floating in front of him. Mama, he said, yelling in sadness, crying before eating the brownie, and fainted, his small mind unable to process this. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author pyrohelixdrago on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.